Welcome back to the Stitch Studio. Today we'll be making a men's two-piece trouser block which is suitable for creating casual and sportswear pants which don't require a waist dart. So let's get into it. So let's head over to the measurements tab where I'll take you through the current measurements I'll be using to make the trouser block. These are based on a size medium as directed by the book Metric Pattern Cutting for Menswear by Aldridge. The first measurement we've got is the inseam, which runs down the inside of the leg. Followed by this, we've got the rise, which is in the seated position as shown by the diagrams. And finally, the last measurement we'll be using is the hip width. So that is the widest part of the hips. All the measurements are also noted on the right for your convenience. Before we begin, we're going to need to create the basic piece. So A is going to mark our starting point, and I'm going to hold down Shift to get a straight line. From here, the measurement that we'll be using is the body rise plus 2 centimeters of ease. You can also go with 4 centimeters of ease depending on the fit that you would like. So this is really going to create our second point, A1. For A2, we're going to use the same tool again, and we're going to start at A1 as our base point. Holding down Shift for a straight line, I'm going to let go until our measurement box comes up. This specific measurement is going to be the inside leg measurement with no ease. For point A3, I'm going to take the midpoint tool to get the halfway point between 1 and 2. This is going to reduce the number of measurements that I need. Now point 4 will be measured horizontally across from point A1. For the formula for this measurement, we will need 1/4 of our hip measurement plus 4 centimeters of ease. If you want a looser fit, then I would recommend using 8 centimeters for ease instead. Now, from point 4, we need to get point 5. The way I'm going to do this is it's going to be an intersection of 2 perpendiculars. So I've used the perpendicular tool to measure A and A4 as my base point to create A5. From A5, I'm going to hold down the Shift button horizontally across and measure A6, which is 1 centimeter away. Point 7 is a partial measurement between the points 4 and 5. I'm going to get this by using our straight line tool. In the measurement section, this is going to be equivalent to 1/4 of the distance between points A and A1. So I'm using that line distance here and getting 1/4 of that measurement by dividing it by 4. Now I'm going to extend out point 4 towards point 8 using a straight line. This is going to create the crotch point of our trousers. For this, the length I'll be using is the 1/4 of the measurement between points 1 and 4. So going down to the lines and getting the length between A1 and A4, I'm going to divide that by 4, and I'm going to take off 0.5 centimeters. If you would like some additional ease, you can add on 0.5 centimeters. Before I close out my curves, I'm going to need a placeholder point from A4. This point is going to help me guide the curve through points 6, 7 and 8. The measurement of this is 3 centimeters from point 4, and it's at an angle of 135 degrees. The next step will be to use your curve tool to connect all 3 points. Starting at point 6, I've gone through point 7. Now make sure you're not clicking on point A9 as that is our placeholder, but you're running the curve through that specific placeholder point. Once that's done, I can remove my placeholder point to know that my curve has the right shape. Now, taking our midpoint tool between points A1 and A4, I'm going to mark the halfway line between these 2 points and add on 1 centimeter of ease. This is going to create our new permanent point A9. Zooming out, we want A9 to intersect with a perpendicular at A3. So again, picking up our perpendicular tool, I've used A9 and A3 as my base points to create the point A10, which is going to be where the knee line sits. From here, point 11 is a similar process using our perpendicular line tool. Here, the base points are A10 and A2. Once we've got point 11 in place, our next step is to create the adjoining point 12. To do so, I'm going to use the point at a distance tool. Our base point, we're going to click at point 11, and our secondary point is going to be 2. The formula for this is going to be the line lengths of the distance 1 to 4. So I'm just going to select that, divide that by 3, and add 1 centimeter for ease. So for point A13, we're using our midpoint tool, starting at 12 towards 11, and instead of dividing, we're actually going to multiply by 2. So that creates an easy way of getting point 13. Now the next step is to create a curve that joins point A1 and A12 together for the side seam. What this is going to do is create a small little point at A1. So to get rid of this, I'm going to go on the right hand side for the C1 length and change it to 1 centimeter. If we zoom in here, we can still see that there is a point. So by clicking on the curve and modifying that square red point, I'm actually going to reduce that curve that happens at A1, so there's no point in our final pattern. Our next step is to create a point 14 on the line across A1 and 12. And we're doing this between the intersection points of both of these areas. So I've used A1 and 12 as my line, and A3 and 10 as our second line. And you can see that's created a point at the intersection of both of these areas, A14. So zooming out, our next step is to create a line between points 10 and 14. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to be using this same measurement to create another point 15. So using our midpoint formula tool, I'm using point 14 as my base and point 10 as the secondary. And instead of halving this, we're going to multiply this measurement by 2 again to get point 15. Now zooming out, we need to create the inseam between points 8, 15 and 13. Points 15 and 13 will be connected by a straight line, whereas points 8 and 15 will be connected with a curve. Before we get to the curve, I'm going to create a straight line between these 2 points as my guiding point. So I've used the line tool, and I've used point 8 as my base and point 15 as my finishing point. And I'm just making the line dotted so I know it's a placeholder and it needs to be deleted later. With the midpoint tool, I'm going to find the halfway between these 2 points. And from here, I'm going to create a secondary point that is 1 centimeter out from A16. What this point tells me is that I need to make sure my curve is 1 centimeter in between points 8 and 15 when I am doing the curve tool. So now let's pick up our curve, and with both of the base points selected, I'm just going to make sure that it goes through point A17. Once I'm happy with the shape of the curve, I can delete all of my placeholders. Now I need to close up my waistline between the top points. So with the line tool, I'm going to select point A6 and A to close out the waistline. We also need to finish off the bottom hem of the trousers. So again, picking up my line tool, I'm going to select point A13 all the way up until A12 to close out the bottom seam. For the back section, I'm going to create a point between 6 and A, which is 5 centimeters away from point 6. This is going to mark our point A16. From here, we're going to create a point vertically upwards at A17. So I'm holding down my shift again for that straight line, and this measurement is going to be 4 centimeters. For more ease, you can use 5 centimeters instead. From point A, I'm going to create point 18 horizontally across. This measurement is 4 centimeters as well, or 5 if you want some additional ease. Now we need to join our points 17 and 18 together with a straight line. So, using my line tool, I'm going to select my base point and my finishing point. Here, I'm just going to change the color of that point so I know it is for the back section. Once you have that line done, you're going to get the midpoint between A4 and A5. And this is going to create our new point 19. From our crotch point at A8, I'm going to create another line which extends out to point 20. The measurement of this is going to be the line length between the points A4 and A8 plus 0.5 centimeters of ease, or plus 1 centimeter for additional ease. From point 20, I'm going to use the straight line tool to measure downwards by 1 centimeter to create point 21. I'm using my line tool again to create a placeholder point for a curve from point A4. This measurement is going to be 5.5 centimeters from point 4 or 6 centimeters for extra ease. Now using my curve tool, I'm going to connect points A17, A19 and A19 to A21, making sure that I'm going through point 22, which is my placeholder point. Once that's done, I can remove that point. Now we need to extend out point 12 by 1 centimeter to create point 22. So going back to the tools on our left, I'm going to actually use the midpoint tool between 12 and 2, and I'm just going to get that measurement as 1 centimeter away from point 12. From here, we're going to close out the side seam of the back section between the base point and point 22. And I've made this pink so you can tell that it is actually the back section. Now we need to create a point at the intersection of these two lines on the knee line. So I'm going to use my tool, which is the intersection of a point and a line. And I've selected again the side seam again for point 18 to 22, and also between points 3 and 14 to create our new point. Now, zooming into point 13, I'm going to extend this out by 1 centimeter to create point A24. And this is going to be the measure point of our bottom hem on the back section. Now I need to extend out point 15 horizontally to the left. So picking up my line tool and holding down shift to create a straight line, the formula I'm going to use is the line distance between points 14 and point 23. So selecting that and clicking OK, you'll see we've now got point A25, which is that exact same distance. Before we can close out the final inside leg seam on the back section, I'm going to create a placeholder line between our 2 points. So using our line tool again, between point 21 and point 25, I'm going to create a temporary line. I've made this line dotted so I know to remove it in the final section, and I'm also going to get the midpoint between these two. From the midpoint, I'm going to create a secondary point that extends out by 2 centimeters. So this is going to let me know that the final curve that needs to be done on our inseam needs to come inwards by 2 centimeters. Again, I've kept the placeholder dotted lines on there. So now we're ready to go and close out the inseams. I'm going to complete this with a straight line between points 24 and 25, like we did before. And we're going to use a curve to close out points 21 to 25, making sure that we're hitting point 27 so it extends out by 2 centimeters. I've changed the color of this to pink so we know in the final pattern which areas to select for the back section. You can now go ahead and remove the temporary placeholder points 26 and 27. We're almost ready to start tracing out our block. We just need to close off the bottom hem of our back section. So that's going to be between points 24 and 22 using our line tool. Once you're done connecting the 2 points together, I've just changed that up to pink again to let us know that is the back section. So moving on, let's start tracing our front pattern piece. We're going to go to the far left on the piece section and select Create a Piece. Starting from point A6, I'm going to select all of the points on my front section, which are outlined on the black solid line, all the way across in a clockwise motion. You'll see that this will start highlighting all of the selected areas red. Once the whole piece is selected, I'm going to click Enter and hit OK. Going over to the Piece tab, you can see that everything has come out for our front section of the trouser block. Heading over to the blocks, I'm going to repeat the same step for our back section. Once again, select the Create Pattern button and starting from point A17, trace in a clockwise direction all of the areas with the pink lines for our back section. Once this is complete, hit Enter and OK. You can see here that we've got the final 2 pieces ready to go. From here you can print it out, label it, add your seam allowances and modify the pattern pieces. As always, thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next tutorial.